So I'm really pleased to introduce Kath Pasami. Kath is the Chief Executive Officer of the British Army's recruiting group, Capita. So Kath, welcome along. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
So we actually, Kath, we were introduced by Captain Dan Hackett, who's actually one of the guys that work within the Capita recruiting group. Is that right?
Yes, indeed. Dan's one of my team, but lots of great work with the cadets.
Yeah, no, he does. Dan's really prolific on social media. We kind of helping out and sharing stuff, which is really good. It's actually great to see the kind of level of engagement that we get from the kind of regular and the reserve army with the army cadets. Actually, it's really quite inspiring. So thanks for joining us. I know you've got some slides prepared, so hopefully everybody can see your slides. Do you want to just kick off and start talking us through your slides then?
Yeah, absolutely. So hi everybody. Thank you for having me. It's Kath Pasami, actually. Sorry, Chris.
Oh, sorry.
Don't worry. Honestly, everybody makes that mistake. It's Italian, so it catches people out. So yeah, it doesn't rhyme with pastrami. Pasami. So yeah, look, we're going to do some Q&A later, and I hope that all of you will feel that you can ask me whatever you want to ask me about anything that I talk about or anything that I don't talk about. Literally, ask me anything. And please call me Kath, no marms. It makes me feel very old, and I'm quite old enough as it is already. And so when I was invited to come and talk to you, I thought, well, look, what on earth can I tell a group of kind of, I guess, mainly 13 to 18-year-olds? What can I tell you that might be useful? So I thought, rather than talking to you about my career, I thought I'll talk to you about the stuff I wish I had known when I was your age. The stuff that, had I known it 20-something years ago, might have helped me in my career. And so I'll do that, and I'll kind of do it that way, and I'll do it in the context of some examples from my career as well, to kind of try and bring it to life in terms of the stuff I wish I'd known that would have helped me out in my own career. So I'm going to talk for kind of 20-25 minutes ish, I think, and then you can ask me anything you like, and we can get into a bit of discussion if you want. And obviously I'm not going to talk specifically in great detail about army careers. That's not what I'm here to do, but absolutely clearly, because of my job, you can ask me anything you like about, the process of joining the army or careers in the army, and as much as I can, I will answer those questions. And if I don't know the answer, then I'll make sure that we come back to you with the answer as well. So you can talk about the stuff I talked to you about my own career, or we can talk about army jobs as well at the end. So I hope that makes sense and works for all of you. So I don't know if any of you will know this, if any of you might be from the Essex area, but this is Chelmsford Army Careers Centre. And when I was 17, I was really interested in possibly joining the army. You could do something then called it's a bit like the gap year commission you can do now. It was a short service commission. So you could join the army for 3 years, go to Sandhurst, and just get a bit of experience. And I thought that would be fabulous. So I kind of screwed up my courage. I was really nervous. And these career centres can be quite intimidating because you have to ring the bell to go in. And so I screwed up my courage and rang the bell, and I went in. And I walked out again kind of 10 minutes later, a bit confused, a bit disappointed and deflated, because there was a sergeant in there who just had made me feel like I must be mad to even think about a career in the army, and I clearly didn't belong and didn't fit, and it would never be for me. So I walked out again kind of a bit confused, a bit deflated, and kind of forgot all about anything military as a career, and went off to university, did sports science at Loughborough, and fell into recruiting. And then fast forward about, well, a bit more than 20 years, if I'm completely honest, but 20-ish years. And this was me a year ago, actually, at Harrogate, the Army Sixth Form College at Harrogate, that some of you might know of, standing next to General Paul Manson, presenting to a room full of the national press, who were all kind of assembled there for a press conference about army recruiting. So now, 20 years on from that disappointment at the career centre, I work within the army, and I kind of have the equivalent rank of a 2-star Major General. So it's kind of funny how things turn out sometimes, and that's something I'll come back to in a bit in terms of career lessons. And that's the kind of start and the end of the career story. And to talk to you a little bit more about my current job, just so you know what it is and what I do. There's a partnership between Capita, a company called Capita, which is the logo you can see on the screen, and the Army. It's a 10-year partnership. It's just been extended for 2 years, actually, so 12 years, to run all recruitment for the Army. And that's regulars and reserves, and it's soldiers and officers. So I'm the chief exec of that partnership. So I've got about, and it kind of varies a bit, it goes up and down, but between about 1,200 and about 1,400 at any one time people working for me doing that. And about 400 to 500 of them are soldiers. So the soldiers get rotated in to come and work in recruiting for a period of time. So we do everything from the TV ads that hopefully you will see, and you can tell me what you think about those at the end. I'd love to know. We do the TV ads and the marketing, right through everything around medicals and fitness testing and running those career centres that I talked about before, all the way through to when someone starts training at Sandhurst or at Harrogate or at Pirbright or any one of the other Army training places. So yeah, amongst all of that, we also do the career centres. And so I know that if my 17-year-old self walked into Chelmsford Army Career Centre now, I'd have a very different experience. So I can take some real satisfaction from that. Now, the press and the politicians are very, very interested in Army recruitment. It's a really, really hot topic. So quite a lot of my job is kind of up and out, dealing with the press and dealing with the politicians, as well as leading the team that go about delivering all of the recruitment. And it's been pretty difficult for a number of years, and we've had some pretty nasty press stories actually over that time. But now it's, I'm pleased to say it's going really well. And for the last 2 years, we've hit 100% of the Army's recruiting target, which is a pretty big achievement, which we're very, very proud of actually. So that's the start and the end of my career story. And a great example of one of the things I wanted to tell you about in terms of things I wish I'd known when I was at school about work and about jobs and about careers. So the first one is this, and my story of walking into that Army Career Centre when I was 17 is a great example of this. People think success is like, a straight line, and you can have a plan and you follow your plan and then you get to the end of it and you achieve your goal. And really, it's just not like that at all. And in your own careers, you'll have all sorts of ups and downs, but it's really important. The thing about the low bits and the setbacks and the failures is about how you respond to them. And there's a great quote from Winston Churchill, which I really love, and he had a lot of great quotes. But one of his great quotes was, "Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts." And I think that's a really good motto for life when you're thinking about your career. So yeah, another, by the way, of Sir Winston Churchill's favourite best quotes, which I like, is there was a lady who said to him one night, "Sir, you are drunk." And he said, "Yes, madam, but you are ugly, and in the morning I will be sober." I love that one. But yeah, so Winston Churchill had a lot of wise things to say. He had a lot of controversial things to say as well. He had a lot of wise things to say. So yeah, failure is not fatal. It's the courage to continue that counts. So if you think about, failure is a part of success. You think about babies learning to walk. All of us have done that. The only reason we learned to walk is because we kept falling over, but we kept getting up again, and eventually you learn. So it's just like that. And any of you, and again, we might talk about this at the end, but if you've seen the Army adverts from this year, the last couple of months, you'll know that our kind of campaign motto for Army recruitment at the moment is fail, learn, win. And just pointing out that actually the ability to have a safe environment to fail in is great, because then you learn and then ultimately you win. So this is one of my big takeaways. Path to success is never smooth. And my own ups and downs over the last 3 years I've been doing this job for 3 years, and I've had some incredible highs, like amazing moments, like being in a tank bombing around Salisbury Plain on a sunny day. It was a lot of fun. But then also I've been trolled on social media really nastily because some soldiers didn't like some of our advertising campaigns. So I've had amazing highs and amazing lows, and I think the important thing to know is that you learn something from everything, whether that's a high or a low, and ultimately you'll get there in terms of achieving that success, even if it isn't quite the way you thought you would at the beginning. So yeah, I definitely, if you'd asked me what I was going to do when I was 17 walking into that career centre, I never ever would have thought it would turn out as the way it has. Second thing, take risks. And this is really important. Now, the stat on this slide comes from a book. It gets quoted quite a lot, this stat. It comes from a book by a lady called Sheryl Sandberg. And she is the chief operating officer of Facebook. And before that, she worked for Google. So she's been massively successful. And I'd imagine she is an extraordinarily rich lady. But she wrote a really good book called Lean In, which I'd recommend. It's worth reading. It's not long. It's a good book. And the stats on this slide come from that book. And this is possibly one that's slightly more biased towards the females in the audience, but I also think it applies to everybody. So generally, when a man is reading a job description, if he can do 60% of it, he'll apply. He'll kind of go, yeah, I'll back myself. I can learn the rest on the job, and he'll apply. For women have to read job spec and look at it and know they can do 100% of all the things that are listed on that job spec, or they won't apply for the job, generally. And that's why you often find women struggling to get to the heights career-wise that men do, because they're just naturally less inclined to take risks. Now, obviously, that's a huge sweeping generalization, and there'll be plenty of boys, men out there as well who also feel a bit constrained and not wanting to take risks. But this is a great example of why you should back yourself. You know, you do not need to look at a job description and think you can do absolutely everything on that in order to put yourself forward for it. You know, back yourself, and you can learn on the job the stuff you don't know. And I read the book, Sheryl Sandberg's book, a really important point for me when I was just asked to step up to a really big job, to be managing director of the resourcing business in Capita. So a job a couple of years before the army job that I do now. And so it was leading about 80 people at the time, and I was being successful in that job. And they wanted me to lead about 500 and to effectively, you know, be the boss of all the people who were my colleagues. And I was really worried about it. It was you know, stepping into the unknown, moving away from a role I'd been doing really well and was really comfortable in, to being the boss of all my colleagues. You know, I knew the finance director thought he should have the job, and he would be difficult. And did I really want to take that on? And I really ummed and ahed. And in the end, it was the fact I'd read the book at the right time, and I'd read that point about women not backing themselves and not taking risks, that pushed me over the edge and made me take the risk and take the plunge, and agreed to take on that challenge. And it was a maternity cover role, so I was doing it for 6 months. So I kind of rationalised that even if things went wrong, I could always go back to the old job. So I took the plunge. And I look back now and go, I cannot believe I agonised about it so much and really thought and second guessed myself so much, because it was an obvious thing to do, and it really helped me give me a stepping stone to then go on to better and bigger jobs as well. So that's number 2. Take risks, back yourselves when you're looking and thinking about whether, if you're not sure if you can do something, believe that you can. Number 3, be authentic. Be authentic, right? Be yourself. So the photo on the left here is my professional profile picture on LinkedIn. Which is like Facebook for careers, if you don't know. And the photos on the right are all me as well. You know, mucking around with my family, or mucking around on rugby tour, because I coach mini rugby. So I am really not a very serious person at all, and I like nothing more than mucking around, getting dressed up, playing practical jokes, being stupid. But for a long time in my career, I believed that you had to be really serious at work. And particularly as you know, you became a manager and you got more senior, you definitely had to be really serious. And so I used to tone down, you know, the real me, and I used to tone down all the fun stuff a few notches. But actually, that really wasn't me. And it might be a coincidence, or it might not. But you know, the point at which I realised it was okay just to relax and be me was also the point I started to be more effective at work, and actually I started to really climb the career ladder and get given more responsibility. And I had a great example in front of me in my earlier days in Capita, actually, a lady called Dawn Marriott Sims, who was a chief operating officer of Capita, and Capita was quite a macho company, but she was the first woman I saw who would wear dresses and really funky high heels and loads of lipstick. And she wasn't a woman dressing up and trying to pretend to be a man. She was very comfortable with completely being herself. And she used to use emojis in emails all the time, like when it was not, you know, no one knew what emojis were. And she really was not very serious, but was deadly serious and brilliant at her job. And actually now she is a partner in a private equity firm and earns millions of pounds. She's mega successful. So she was someone who absolutely showed me the way that being authentic and being yourself is absolutely okay. And you can still be serious at your job and really good at it. Okay. Number 4. These slides are a bit random. I do apologise for my imagery. So this is slightly different one. Okay, so have confidence and assume inclusion. Now, what do I mean by that? I think all of us at some point in our lives or our careers will find ourselves in the minority in the room. So whether you're the only woman or the only male, maybe, or you're the only white person or the only brown person or the only gay person or the only disabled person, at some point you'll find yourself in a minority in a group of other people. And this picture on the left, you can just kind of see me facing the camera looking down at my phone or something. And then I'm surrounded by, and actually this was in London, so most of the people at that table would normally be in army uniform, like Major Chris, because they're all generals or brigadiers. And this was the monthly board meeting we used to have to govern army recruiting. And it was the guy with his back to the camera with a white shirt on, sitting up quite straight, is Commander Home Command. So that's Lieutenant General Tyrone Urch. So he used to chair this meeting, and then the rest of the people there were 2-star generals and me. And this meeting would happen every month. And when I came into my job, and I first kind of came into this environment, I was like, whoa, I was the only female, I was the only civilian, and all my peers, actually, my army peers, those guys are pretty much more or less 10 years older than me, all of them. And they'd all been in the army for years together. And it was quite intimidating. But I thought, I've got 2 choices here. I can assume that I'm not included here and I'm the outsider, and I'll, you know, stand at the back of the room and not come forward and not give my opinions and my views. Or I can throw myself in. I can just choose to decide that I'm included here and that they value my opinion, they value my views. And then I believe I'll be more effective. So that's what I did. And there were subtle things at the beginning of this. And the guy I'm sitting next to with the glasses and the laptop is General Paul Manson, who was in the photo earlier on. He and I worked very closely together running recruiting. And in the first few meetings we had with this room, it was all the rest of the generals would talk about Paul's operation and Paul's team. And I ignored that, and I kept going and I kept pushing. And before long, it was always, okay, Paul and Kath and Paul. And they recognised and they accepted me as part of the group and included. So I think it's really important, if you're ever in these situations, choose to feel included. You know, you can look for the signs that you're excluded, or you can choose to feel included and to have confidence. And you'll find that you therefore are more effective. And you are actually, the fact of acting as if you're included will make you feel included. I hope that makes sense. And then the cake. This was a bit of a story about sometimes if you are a bit different to everyone else, it gives you an advantage because you can play the rules of the game a bit differently. So when I first started my job with the army, the relationship between the Capita team and the army team wasn't great because the recruitment was going quite badly. And in the month before I took over in charge, I had the opportunity to go and watch a couple of the meetings that were taking place with my predecessor who was still in charge. And I remember one meeting which was chaired by a brigadier, and there was the brigadier at one end of the table, at the head of the table, and all the army team down one side and all the Capita civilian team down the other side, and everyone was very serious, and it was really confrontational and really difficult and really grumpy. And I thought, my God, I can't have this. I can't work in this environment or atmosphere. It's just horrible for everybody. And so the next month, when I was then in role, I rocked up to the meeting and I baked a cake, and not just fairy cakes, but a big cake like the one in the picture. And I rocked up with a cake tin and a stack of napkins and a knife cutter, and I said, I thought we'd have some cake. And the army team kind of looked at one another, looked at me, looked at the brigadier, and kind of waited for him to, you know, tear me limb from limb and eviscerate me. But obviously you can't if someone brings cake. It's a nice thing, right? So, and the brigadier, to his credit, said, right, we'll have cake. And so we did. And the atmosphere in that meeting changed utterly from that moment. And at the end of the meeting, he said, right, well, next month I'll bake. And so that meeting then became, we all took turns to bake. And actually it was relaxed, it was fun, we were collaborative, we were collegiate, we got problems solved. And it sounds really kind of lightweight and a bit flippant, but that, you know, just the act of doing something a bit different and moving the goalposts changed the tone completely. Now, I only got away with that because I was female and civilian. So just sometimes if you're the person who's slightly different to everyone else, just think about how you might use that to your advantage, would be my advice. You can play the game differently. You don't have to play by everyone else's rules. Okay, so this is another one. This is a kind of take all the help you can get kind of message. So I don't know how many of you have heard the term mentors and sponsors and coaches and advocates. So they all mean slightly different things, but they're all people that can help you in your own job and your own career. So on this page are pictures of people who are performed all those 4 roles for me. So a mentor is someone who, and you might have lots of mentors at one time, and you might have a mentor who you have a kind of ongoing mentoring relationship with for many years, or you might have a mentor who you just have a couple of conversations over a few months with. But that is someone who you know, respect, often who will have been through similar challenges to the ones that you are experiencing, that you can ask their advice for. And typically a mentor is there to say, Kath, you know, in that situation, this is what I'd have done, or when it was me, this is what I did, and give you advice as to how they would approach your problems, basically. And give on here you've got the guy in the top right with a check shirt is a guy called Kevin Dady, who was my kind of unofficial. He kind of adopted me. He was an unofficial mentor for a while because we got talking and said, yeah, come and see me before your next board meeting. I'll help you out. And he was great. And then there's the guy in the middle of the picture, actually at the top, is a guy called Charlie Redmayne, who is the big brother of Eddie, the actor, for those who know, who was in, what was the character he played in the Harry Potter spin-off films? I can't remember. Anyway, Eddie Redmayne, very famous actor, his big brother, Charlie. Charlie is the chief exec of a big publishing company, HarperCollins. And Capita had a scheme to match people with external mentors. So he actually kind of got matched with me and was my external mentor for a couple of years. And he was amazing. He was great because he didn't know me or what I was doing, but he gave me the benefit of his advice and experience in business of many years, which was fantastic. And then you've got sponsors. Now, sponsors are people who are generally senior to you in your company, probably 2 or 3 layers up. But basically, you kind of have like a two-way relationship with them in that you make them look good because you do a great job. And obviously they're your probably boss's boss or your boss's boss's boss. So by you doing a great job, you're helping them look good and you're helping them achieve their goals. And kind of in return, therefore, they will support you and promote you and give you bigger, better jobs and more opportunity because they know they can rely on you. And a sponsoring relationship isn't one that you will typically sit down and say, you're my sponsor, or, you know, I'm going to sponsor you. That doesn't happen very much. It just kind of happens naturally, organically. So the lady in the top left here with the scarf on, that's Dawn Marriott Sims, who I talked about before. And she was my sponsor and really helped me progress my career. Then you've got an advocate. This is a difficult one. The guy at the bottom left with the glasses used the Capita Chief Financial Officer, Patrick Butcher. And Capita decided to try and help some women progress up the ladder in Capita. So they appointed all of the senior board members in Capita to be the advocate for one woman. And Patrick was my advocate. So an advocate's again subtly different to a mentor, subtly different to a sponsor. An advocate's someone who's there, you know, his job is to kind of get to know you and understand your strengths, weaknesses, your aspirations, and then to advocate for you. So when, you know, the board are talking about potential big jobs, their job is there to go, well, what about Kath? So that's another one. And then coaches. Now, the lady in the bottom right is a lady called Amanda, and she's my coach. And a coach typically is someone who you have to pay, or hopefully your company will pay. And they do lots and lots of qualifications and training to become professional exec coaches. And they are there, and they won't really tell you what to do, like a mentor would. They are there to help you think through your problems yourself, and they have lots of clever techniques to work with you to think about problems that you're going through and help you get to the answer yourselves. And they're also really, really useful. And the last one is General Paul again. He's featured 3 times now in this. General Paul in the middle at the front, who kind of is, I worked with him so closely for 2 years. He became very much an unofficial mentor as well. But all these people have really, really helped me over the course of my career, across the last probably 6-7 years, these people. So in your own career and in your own jobs, look out for people that can perform any of those roles, because they're all really important. And if you can get all 4 of them, mentors, sponsors, coaches, and advocate, then you'll find it really, really helps. Don't be scared to ask for help, ever. Okay, so those are my 5, and then I've added a 6th on the bottom. So, firstly, the path to success is never going to run smooth. Things will not go as you expect them to go in your career, but it will be okay. Okay, trust yourself, back yourself. Second one, take risks. If people offer you an opportunity and you're not sure, take the risk, because it will work out okay in nearly every case. And if it doesn't, you just learn from it. Third, be yourself. I mean, yeah, you spend too much time at work to not be able to relax, be yourself, be authentic. People want to see you and understand you. So have the confidence to be yourself. Assume inclusion. In every situation, believe that you're included, and then you will be. Lastly, the 5th one, which is one I've just talked about, take all the help you can get from anywhere you can get it. And 6th, relax and enjoy the ride, right? We're all going to spend a lot of our lives at work, and it's really important that you kind of enjoy what you're doing and you don't feel stressed, and you do relax and enjoy it. So I'd also say, when I said take all the help you can get, I'm now in your network. Look me up on LinkedIn and Twitter. Reach out. If people reach out to me on LinkedIn or Twitter or anywhere and ask for help or advice, I never ever say no. I have a rule. So if you ever want help or advice, you can reach out. There's not many possum eyes around, so you should be able to find me quite easily on social media. Okay, that's me. That was what I wanted to talk about. And now I'm open to any questions you might want to ask me about any of that stuff, or about Army and Army recruiting more generally. And there is, I forgot to say at the top, Chris, there is a prize. Or my background's not helping here, but this is the Stand Up Straight. Thank you, Chris. So that's Stand Up Straight, which is the book 10 Life Lessons from Sandhurst, which is written by Major General Paul Nelson, who I've been talking about. And as I haven't written the book myself, I thought I would use his book. And that is, I've got 2 copies actually, 2 copies on offer for the 2 people who come up with the best questions, and I will get them signed to you by Paul as well, by General Paul.
Brilliant. What better than a signed copy of the book for a Major General, especially one that you speak so highly of.
No, he's great.
Thanks for that. That was really, really good. There was a lot of good stuff in there for cadets, and I mean, some of the context there was kind of career based, but I think there's loads of stuff in there, Kath, that's kind of like life based as well. So like every single one of those points and the lessons that you've learned, like, they can be transferred to all areas of your life, though, can't they? Kind of the path through life never runs smooth, let alone careers. So yeah, no, it's really, really good. And I've learnt a lot actually. I think I never mentioned it at the beginning, but I've actually listened to a few podcasts that you've been on, and there's been some really, really good stuff in there in terms of the advice that you've offered and some of the lessons that you've learned. So thanks very much. So we invite some questions for the cadets, so I can see some popping up in the chat, and we'll get to those in a wee minute. So if anybody does have a question, then pop it in if you want to get a copy of this book. And there's 2 on offer, which is absolutely great. The first question that was submitted in advance was from Cadet Fraser Jorgensen. He's a Scottish cadet from 5 Platoon Scots Guards, which is in Lanark. His question is, do you think that national service would enable upskilling of young people for the modern workplace, whilst at the same time allowing a broader cross-section of society to try out an army career?
That is a great question, Fraser. Thank you. Wow. It's really controversial, the idea of national service. Personally, I think if it was structured very carefully and done well, then it could be a real plus, actually, for I think you'd have to make sure that it wasn't necessarily, didn't have to be military service for everybody, but there's all sorts of different forms that national service can take in terms of serving society. So yeah, I mean, I think the military themselves, the military offers huge opportunities for learning a massive variety of skills. And unfortunately, lots of people don't realize that. They just think it's kind of guns and tanks and bombs and bullets, and it absolutely isn't. And actually, the way that the army has been helping during COVID is a great example of the fact that actually it isn't that. It's building hospitals and administering vaccines and organizing amazing logistical challenges. There's all sorts of other things that you can learn in the military. So yeah, I mean, I think the more everybody understands those opportunities and can take advantage of them, the better.
No, that's really good. And I think obviously the army as well is starting to diversify in terms of like its output. So you've now got, I'm an IT guy, but you kind of cyber is becoming kind of a big thing in terms of sort of threat and protection, of course. So they start to recruit specific skills and about that, and there's really good opportunities for young people to kind of start a career in sort of technology within the army, as well as every other area. So
yeah, and also I think the other thing is it's really important to remember you don't have to join the army for life, right? You can join and do 5 years, 6 years, learn some great skills, get apprenticeships, and then leave and go do other stuff. Loads of people do that too. It's not like, I think society has very much changed, and how people think about careers has changed. For my parents' generation, pretty much you joined a company and you stayed there for your 40-year career, and now that would be unthinkable, really.
Yeah.
For most of us, you want to be able to probably have 2, 3, 4 careers, do different jobs. And the way that the pace of technological change and the pace of change generally means that one of the most important things you can learn, and I probably should have said this in my talk, is the ability to be adaptable and open to learning new skills and be able to change, because probably in your careers you'll end up learning 2 or 3 different jobs just to keep up the pace of change that's coming, which is exciting and a bit scary sometimes.
All right, good. Good question, Mr. Jorgensen. Well done. Right, we'll switch to the chat now. Major Webster, you've been sitting having a wee look. Have you got any questions for Kath?
Yeah, we've got one regarding your principles, and obviously the presentation that you've just done, which is from Corporal Middleton, and it's what was it ever hard for you to come to understand all of these principles, and what made you come to them in the first place?
Ooh, I think that's a great question. Again, thank you. I think it's just time and experience, really. I wrote some of this down about a year ago because I was asked to go back to my old school and do a careers talk. And I thought, God, what do I say? And so it wasn't really until I actually sat down, reflected, and took the time to kind of look back and go, really, what would have been useful to know 25 years ago when I was at school. So yeah, it's a bit of bitter experience, sometimes being lucky and things going right, and sometimes things going wrong, and looking back and reflecting on that kind of helped me come to all those conclusions, I think.
Yeah, I think it
great.
So unfortunately there's no shortcut other than maybe listening to some of the stuff I've said and trying to remember it a little bit, but a lot of things you do just learn through experience, I think.
It's great to have role models like yourself, actually, hopefully telling other people the mistakes not to make. So that's brilliant. And we have another question from Cadet Preston. Have you ever feared anything doing your job? And if so, how did you overcome those fears?
You guys are on fire. These are great questions. No feared anything. Yes. Often. Sorry, I've got my team are trying to message me. I think probably one of the things I was most nervous of was I had to go and talk to a group of politicians. There's something called parliamentary select committees that they have, and that's where a gang of politicians basically get together and do investigations, and they can compel people to come and give evidence. And there was a Welsh Affairs committee a couple of years ago. They were doing an investigation into the armed forces in Wales, and recruiting was part of what they were looking into. So I was summoned to go and give evidence in front of them. And it's quite intimidating because you go to the House of Commons and I don't know if you've seen it on TV sometimes, but they have basically, they sit at a kind of oval table, and there's about 12 of them, the MPs. And then you kind of sit at a bench in front of them on your own. And it's on Parliament TV. So anyone can watch it, you know, and it's recorded, it's there forever. So if you make an idiot of yourself, you know, it's not good. Let's put it that way. And because it's political, and army recruiting is really political, I was very conscious that it would be very easy to make a big slip up in front of those politicians. So I did. I mean, in terms of how I overcame it, I prepared really, really hard. So we did a lot of work thinking about what are the questions that they're going to ask, what are their interests. We researched all the MPs who were on the committee, did the research, what are they interested in, what are they likely to ask, what are their, you know, some of them have a particular agenda, you know, are they likely to just try and take the opportunity to score some points and get their local press writing a story about them in their local constituency to try and help their own PR. So all of that was the research. And then I had a team who basically spent a couple of days questioning me really brutally with everything that we thought they might ask. So actually, when I went in there, it was really easy. I shouldn't say this, but every question that they came out with, we'd predicted and we'd planned for. And so I knew exactly what I was going to say. I had all the detail, I had all the data, and actually it went well. So I suppose fear is things like that are quite high profile that could go wrong. And the way to combat it is just preparation, I think.
7 P's they call it in the military.
Yes.
Fire
preparation planning. Yes. Like that one. Quite right, Chris.
We have one now from Corporal Lily Miller. Do you have any leadership advice? Well, there's a couple of questions. Do you have any leadership advice for a junior NCO? And then also kind of linked to it, what advice would you give to yourself looking into a career as a youngster?
Okay.
Don't go to the
recruitment
office.
I think,
yeah,
I think the second part I kind of have covered, I suppose, in terms of advice to myself. But in terms of leadership advice for junior NCO, I've never been a junior NCO, so you guys know that better than me. But in terms of leadership advice generally, and things I've learned about the way to be an effective leader or an ineffective leader, I have a really cheesy phrase that I use with my team, which is be your own CEO. Which stands for CEO because I am the Chief Executive Officer. That's my acronym, right? So that's why it's cheesy, because I'm saying be your own Chief Executive Officer. And CEO stands for curiosity, empowerment, and ownership. And I really wanted my team a couple of years ago. They weren't so hot on all this stuff because they'd had a really tough time over a number of years, and they needed to really be picked up. And I needed them all to step up as leaders themselves and not just to rely on the team right at the top to make all the decisions. I needed them to be able to make the decisions and to see when things were going wrong and to take ownership and control. So I really encouraged them. I had this mantra and I kept repeating it, be your own CEO. And I wanted them to be curious and I wanted them to feel empowered. So by which I mean, I was giving them the control and I was telling them that I was trusting them to make the decisions so that they could take ownership, the O bit. Because what was happening was if people were seeing a problem, they were just kind of telling the person above them about the problem and then thinking they'd done their job. And then they were waiting until, you know, the problem went up the chain of command to the leadership team. And then if an answer came back down, they'd do whatever they were told. And if an answer didn't come back down, well, they told someone, hadn't they? And, you know, we were failing badly as an organisation then. And so I really needed everybody to be willing to feel that they were trusted to take their own decisions. They're the people who are closest to the problem. They're the people who can see they know it better than anyone else. They can see what the answer should be, and they needed to know that they were trusted to solve the problem and just to tell us what they'd done. And I said to them, look, I know 99 times out of 100 you're going to get it right. One time you're going to get it wrong, that's fine, because I don't care. I know that most of the time you're getting it right, and if you do get it wrong once in 100 times, then we'll correct it and we'll learn from it. So feel trusted, feel empowered, know that I take responsibility, and if you get it wrong, I accept that responsibility. So And that made a real difference. And it took quite a long time to get that message home. But when I had my team turn around to me and say, I was my own CEO today, Kath, I did this, that I kind of knew it had landed. They started playing the message back to me. So as a leader, definitely trusting your people, empowering them, giving them ownership, and having their backs, protecting them. If things go wrong, you're the leader, you're the one in charge, you take the hit, right? Because that's the way they learn, and that your organization becomes more effective. And then the other part of that story, I suppose, my point around keeping repeating it, is communication and visibility. You cannot communicate enough as a leader. It doesn't matter. You've got to be really, really, really sick of your own message, and you still won't have said it enough times, because you might think everyone's heard it, but they won't have heard it. And it doesn't matter if they hear it 3 times. Better that than they don't hear it at all. So communicating and over communicating and being really, really visible so your team can see you, hear you as much as possible is my other real important part of leadership, I think.
That's some really good advice there. That's another good question. Well done. Yeah,
brilliant. I think you've answered the second part of this question already in terms of how you motivate others, but Cadet Pierce wants to know how you motivate yourself.
Oh, great question. Again, thanks, Cadet Pierce. So I have 4 things. And I'm trying to remember them because I was talking about this the other day, so I should be able to remember the 4 things. The first is purpose. So doing something that really matters, and knowing that I'm doing something that really matters, is really important to motivate me. So what we're doing for the Army and recruiting for the Army in today's world, which is uncertain, volatile, quite scary in places, it's really important that we have an effective Army. So I believe really strongly in the purpose of what I do, and I know that all my team do too. So purpose is the first one. The second one is balance. So in my job, I could work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and there would still be more stuff to do. So I just have to say, at some point, you just have to say, stop, enough, I'm stopping today. And I don't work in the evenings unless it's a very rare occasion, and I don't work at weekends, hardly ever, because it's really important to me that I have that work-life balance, and I do other stuff. So I play cricket, I go running, I coach rugby, I do lots of sport and other stuff, and get that balance. So work-life balance is really important in terms of keeping motivation and keeping resilience. Then my team, I use my team to help motivate me. I mean, they're a great bunch of people, and we all work really hard together. And I know that actually if I'm having a bad day, I can tell them. I don't have to pretend that I'm invincible as the leader. I can say, look, I'm really struggling, guys. You're going to have to help me out. And they will. And being open about that really helps me. And the fourth one actually is having a bit of a sense of perspective. So yes, recruiting for the Army is really important, but it's not life and death. And most of us, some of us, this isn't true, some of us will work in jobs that are life or death, but most of us don't work in life or death jobs, and recruiting is not a life or death. And I've got sisters who are both surgeons, so whenever I'm having a particularly tough day, I'm, say my sister's cutting open a small baby, then that helps me get a sense of perspective about what it is that I do, and think it's not so tough after all. So yeah, those are my 4 things in terms of motivation and resilience.
Top tips, good. That's some good advice for everyone, I think.
No, that is brilliant, thank you. And then this one, a bit of a light-hearted one now. What is the most fun thing you have ever done? Cadet Pierce also wants to know.
I have done a lot of cool things in this job for the last 3 years. I suppose there are 2. One is on Salisbury Plain, I got the chance to go out in a tank. So I was in the commander's seat in the tank. I had like the helmet on and the microphone, and I was in the commander's seat with my head out the turret, and we had about 20 minutes of just roaring around Salisbury Plain in a tank. And there were other tanks around, and basically the game was to kind of get downwind, spin around, and then blow smoke all over the other tank. And it was a sunny day, and it was absolutely epic. I loved it. And then the second thing is I got the chance a couple of years ago to go with General Paul, who I spoke about earlier, to go over to the States to go and visit the American Army's recruiting operation. And that was fascinating. And I found myself one evening at Fort Knox, so the place where they keep all the gold in America, at Fort Knox, in a general's house drinking bourbon with 2 American generals and an English general. And that was pretty cool. We arrived and the American general had his whole bourbon collection laid out in front of us, because Fort Knox is in Kentucky, which is where they make bourbon. So it's like the home of bourbon. And he had about 8 different types of bourbon that we had to try. So that I did have to pinch myself slightly at that point, go, how on earth am I in America drinking bourbon with a bunch of generals? That was fun.
Sounds like the most American thing you could actually do.
No, it was awesome. It was really good.
Hot dogs or something at the same time. That's good.
So back to the tough ones, I'm afraid. We've got Cadet Sergeant Abby Diamond wants to know, as a leader, how would you suggest being an authoritative figure whilst also being someone they feel comfortable to come to with problems?
I might ask, I'm almost like one of my team's on the call. I might ask Dan to tell if he thinks I do this. I don't know. I think one of the things I really strive to create in my teams is a feeling of what I call psychological safety. And what I mean by that is that you can be yourself. I've talked about how important I think it is to be yourself. So you can be yourself, you can be authentic, you can absolutely bring your whole self to work, is what they say. You don't have to pretend to be anyone you're not in a meeting with me or in my team. And part of that is partly that, and it's also so that people feel that they can say whatever they want to say. There's no I'm definitely not very formal, as you've probably established from the last hour. And I always want to be challenged, because I know that I really don't have the best ideas. I don't have all the answers, and I need my team to feel really comfortable that they can come forward with anything they want to say or any idea that they want to have. So I try and create a relaxed environment, and I welcome feedback and input from everybody. And I make sure I ask everybody in a room, when we could be in a room together, or on the Zoom call, what they think and what their opinions are, to make sure I get that out of everybody. But equally, in terms of being authoritative, I think that comes from being able to gain people's trust, and so that they can see that you care about them and that you care about the purpose of what you're all trying to achieve together as a team. And I think that kind of gives me the authority. And they know that when the tough decisions need to be made, I will make the tough decisions. And if I have to give them a difficult message, so example, last year, Capita were not doing very well financially, so I had to tell everybody that there would be no pay rise and no bonus. So they'll see me give the tough messages when I have to give the tough messages, and taking responsibility when I have to take responsibility. And the authority comes from that. But I don't feel the need to kind of be very stern or authoritative in my manner. I don't think I need that. I hope that makes sense to answer.
I think it does, yeah. Right, I think we've got time for one more. I saw one earlier, Gina, about asking for some advice on joining the army. So this one was actually sent in via email previously. I never saw it, so apologies for that. It says, the question is, you're the Chief Executive Officer of Capita's British Army Recruiting Group. What do you tend to look for in the ideal soldier? Do you have any advice other than what you've already said in that specific area?
It's a great question. So I think the important thing is, when any of you if you ever you apply to the army and you come to any of our assessment centres, what the army's looking for is potential. So definitely doesn't expect you to be the finished article. Doesn't expect you to know the army's values and standards off by heart and how to strip a rifle and clean it at the point you get to an assessment centre. It's not about what you know, it's about your attitude and your potential. So really the important thing is to be keen, to be enthusiastic, to be open to learning. Obviously you need to be fit to a level, but the army's fitness standards are not that tough. Unless you want to be in the paras, then they're quite tough. But generally, to get into the army, you don't have to be, the bionic woman or the bionic man to pass the fitness standards. That comes later. The army is just looking for the fact that you're, medically okay, and that is a big part. And some people do fall at that hurdle, because that can be quite tough. And that you've got some base level of fitness and the right attitude and interest, and that's all it is. The rest that you can learn in training.
That's really good. That's That's a great question, actually. Thanks for that. That was from Corporal Flower again. Okay, so now you've got quite a tough thing to do now. You need to choose 2 of these questions to kind of win the prize of the Stand Up Straight book. Any 2 that jump out at you, Kath?
Yeah, I've tried to make a few notes as we were going through. So I think the 2, and you're probably going to have to refresh my memory. And I remember one of the names, I can remember, the second one I can't. So the first one is Fraser, which was the first question around national service. I thought was banging. And the second one was a question about what I was most scared of, what my fear was, and how I overcame it. And I missed the name on the
Preston. Is your website, is that right? I think so.
Yeah, I think it might be. I'll just have a look through and check.
Cool. So if you can let Major Chris, if you're happy to pass on your addresses, obviously I need your permission for that, but if you're happy to pass me your addresses, I will get those 2 books, which I have here with me, signed for you by Major General Paul Nansen, and I will send them to you as a well done. And thank you for great questions. Thank you, everybody, for great questions. They were phenomenal, much better than I get mostly from my team. And
yes, it was Cadet Preston.
All right, cool. Well done, guys. Thanks everybody for the questions. If you can pop your addresses in a kind of message to us, we'll get them sorted out. I'll sort that at the end. If you 2 guys just hang out at the end, we'll grab your addresses. So, all right, cool. I think that's probably just about time, actually. So just a couple of minutes before 8, so we'll wrap it up there. But Kath, thanks very, very much for giving up your time. I've really, really enjoyed it. There's been loads of great stuff in there, and hopefully the cadets have enjoyed it as well. And if you're ever looking to try and come and do some fun stuff and run about, then I'm pretty sure the cadets will welcome you to come along to visit at some point.
Thank you. It was great, and I really enjoyed it. And like I said, guys, you can find me on LinkedIn and Twitter. If you ever want to follow up on any of that or want some advice, feel free to reach out. It's nice to meet you all, kind of.
All right. Excellent. Cool. Well, we'll leave it there. Thanks, everybody. I'll speak to you all soon. Good night.